Right. Boker Tov, everybody. Today's learning, of course, Le'ilu Nishmat Avigdor Chai Avram Ben Meretzi Rachalea, and also it's appropriate to note that today would have been Avram's 17th birthday. 17 years old. And think about him as I move with the class down to Kita Yud Bet, into their senior years, they say in English. And he'll be a part of that class still. Ezrat Hashem. Okay. We are in Perek Yud Gimel. In Perek Yud Gimel, 13th chapter. We are going to pick it up on page 88 in the small version, from the paragraph that says Hamalbushim v'hakishutim, clothing and jewelry. We'll come back to it in a second. Just kind of recap. This chapter, as we said, starts the change in the tone of the book, where we are dealing now with things that are taking someone from a level of a tzaddik, in quotes. I say in quotes because there's different understandings of what that means, to the level of a chassid, someone who's pious, someone who is more wants and strives more to get closer to God than even the tzaddik. And the topic being prishut, which asceticism, or what was the English word he has in the book? I forgot. No, there's a different one. I have one at home. I was looking. What is it?
For what?
For the type prishut, the title of this chapter. What's the word he uses in the English?
Saintliness.
Saintliness. The saintliness is actually coming up much later. That's what does it say? Separateness, abstinence, separation. What was the one you had? Separation. Okay, but abstinence. Saintliness comes much later. Actually, it's its own chapter.
Not taking yourself away from being with the kid.
It's not taking yourself away from being for the kid. No, it's not. It does not mean that kind of right. So thank you for mentioning that. Actually, let me just. He's not going to say that, but I think it's important. He's going to indirectly say that. Martin mentioned it doesn't mean taking yourself away from a kehillah. What's he referring to? Is it says in Pirkei Avot, Al tifrosh min hatzibur. You shouldn't separate yourself from a kehillah, from a community. You should be part of the community, be involved in the community. It has other connotations as well, but it means also you don't want to. And he's going to talk about this at the end of the chapter. You don't need to be sitting alone in a mountain, the heat boded, for the rest of your life, not involved whatsoever with a chevra, with society. That's we're going to come to right now. We're dealing with what's called the good prishut, and we're going to deal with the bad prishut. Okay, so right now we're on the good. So the last time we talked about having to do with food, we talked about having to do with sex, and now we're going to talk about boring stuff. That's just joking. We're going to talk about clothing. We're going to talk about jewelry, walking and talking, and a few other things. Not boring. Chas v'shalom. Okay. Except when it comes to the topic of the Kohen Gadol and the Kohanim, it doesn't talk in the Torah about, oh, you have to wear this, you have to wear that. Imagine we all walked around in togas, right? We all walk around in togas. Well, Moshe Rabbeinu walked around probably in some kind of a cloak or a sheet of some sort, right? And that's the style of dress. Nowadays, if you go in the United States, in most shuls, you go before the Amud to be the Chazan wearing sandals, they'll stone you, right? Here it's very common. Again, that has to do with the mores of the community you're in, the times you're living in, where you are. So how we dress today is not how they would have dressed 500 years ago. Today, some people feel you have to dress like Polish nobility. Others feel you have to dress like the people walking down the streets, and some everything in between. I like how I can be read between the lines very well. It's great. You got it. All right, very good. Anyways, but it says the Torah doesn't tell us, what jewelry to wear, what not to wear. Matter of fact, if a woman was wearing a big giant nose ring nowadays, we looked at her a little askance. Not a little diamond. I'm talking about a big nose ring. That was a very common thing. We see this. We see that in the Torah that even the women took their zamim and they gave it for the building the Egel HaZahav and all kinds of stuff. What is it we do? What are we told when it comes to clothing? Okay, we can't wear kilayim. We can't have shatnez in our clothing. And if it's a beged that has four corners, it has to have tzitzit. Look, as long as you're wearing something that's not against halacha, you can wear it. Yes, we're not talking about tzniut yet. Kilayim is a mixture. For example, you cannot take shatnez, is wool and linen mixed. Also, kilaim is in other areas, such as you can't take the plant a vineyard and plant wheat next to it. You can no. Those, I mean, like an alloy. No, we're not talking about mixing gold and silver. We're talking about specifically halachic things that you're not allowed to mix. The other is two different types of animals. For example, a donkey and a cow plowing together. You can't do that. Okay. I did mention why. I mean, shatnez is a chok. Okay, it's one of those things that Hashem has his reason for, but whatever. We don't understand necessarily. But I tell you, the one insight I did hear about once, I thought it was fantastic. So if I did, and I forgot if I told you, you forgot if I told you to. Shatnez basically means, first it's a contraction of three words, shava, tava, noz, which is different types of weaving. And it is prohibited to wear linen and wool. Fine, we know that. Why? Mixed together, not just even mixed. If I have on a beged, let's say I have an undershirt that's linen, and I put a wool shirt on top of that, that's also prohibited. I think but I'm not sure, doraita, because you can't take one off without the other. I can't take off the undershirt without taking off the shirt. So therefore, they're considered ki'ilu, they're connected. Okay.
I know of Rabbanim that wouldn't sit down a linen couch.
Right, but that's not. But that's right. That's a little bit of a going over the deep end. We say you wouldn't sit on a couch that may be linen, because even if it does the hitapech on you, it's not. I hear what you're saying. Yeah. So, yes, because they're not mixed. They're not mixed, and they're even there. Right. You can move the cushion out from under you or something like that. In theory, we're talking about clothing right now. Okay. Even though I actually thought I found this great, unbelievable chiddush one time, that in the United States, much of it is made from linen. Yes. What if it has wool? I'll tell everyone, no, you can't have it. Just give me all your money. You don't want to be over an Issa Doraita. Give me all your money. I'll hold on to it for you. It's such a tzaddik. So there is one idea I heard that was absolutely beautiful. When Cain and Hevel come to bring a korban to God, we know that Cain brings one thing and Hevel brings something else. What does Cain bring? Cain brings what? What's he bring? Does he bring the fruit or does he bring the animal? Cain killed Hevel, right? Hevel's object was received, was accepted by God. Hevel brought the best animal he could, right? And Cain brought shlubby fruit. What's the fruit he brought? It was down. It wasn't the best stuff, and the Midrash tells us it was flax. It was flax. And what did Hevel bring? He brought a lamb, a goat, a lamb, wool. He had wool, and his brother brought flax, which is linen. The first mixture of those two brought death. Isn't that cool? That cool? No, it wasn't a mixture, but the idea of the first time they're mentioned together ends up in death. Yeah, it's a stretch. It's a reach. I'll tell you something better then, because this is a different area. Another chok, which I know I've mentioned before. Eating meat and milk together, right? I think it's not okay. I heard that somewhere. You can't eat meat and milk together. You can't cook it together. You can't have benefit from as long as the meat is kosher and the milk is kosher. If you have non-kosher meat and you kosher milk, that's not basar b'chalad. You can have benefit. You can't eat it. You can cook it. You can make money off of it by selling it. You can't. Why? Why meat and milk? I mean, cheeseburger actually looks pretty good. Okay, looks good to me. Okay. Remember, the Rambam says, don't say I don't want it. Say efshi, I want it, but what should I do? Hashem says I can't have it. Anywho, how do you get milk? Not how do you get it. What is milk? Milk is a life source. Whether it's a mother nursing a child, a cow nursing its calf, that's life. How do you get meat? Oh, you go to the Makolet. How do you get meat? You have to kill an animal. So life and death don't go together on the same plate. It's one of the ideas behind it. I actually heard it from a Reform rabbi, female Reform rabbi. I did. And then I said, wow, that's so cool. And she gave me the source. It was like Zohar somewhere. Said, okay. Huh? She was my rabbi, yeah. For that 1 minute. It says, right? Whoever's wise, who's considered wise, anyone who can learn from someone who can learn from everybody. You can learn from everybody something. Doesn't mean they're right in what they're saying or doing all the time, but if you pick up a good nugget, why not? If you hear brilliance and smarts by a non-Jew, believe in it. You can accept it. Oh no, it's a guy. You can't. Okay, fine. Even though we know that the Torah only says what you can't do with clothing, but it doesn't tell us, what you're supposed to wear necessarily. Obviously, when one, who doesn't know that when you wear this fancy stuff and the embroidered materials, he's talking about like really fancy schmancy stuff. What happens? We all know. Tell me, don't tell me. Just think to yourselves. You get all dressed up, right? You're going to a wedding. You're going to some very fancy occasion, whether it's in Israel or the United States, where you really do get fancied up sometimes, a little bit more than here. Oh, he put on his nice jeans. Thank you. I'll be here Tuesdays and Thursdays already. Anyways, he wears good sandals. That's fine. That's fine. I always knew my one of my sons-in-law would be standing under the chuppah in khaki pants and a white shirt, which Baruch Hashem, my second one did. Where was I? Oh, so you get yourself. So and I wore many times. I wore tuxedos many times to weddings. I was either as the Besed Kedushin, it was a black tie required, black tie optional. I owned a tuxedo because of that. You feel a little different. You carry yourself a little different. You're wearing a fancy dress, a fancy suit, whatever you might. And what happens sometimes from that, he says, for the person who gets used to that, they can become some form of balgav. Like, look at me, right? One of the things I was among the 5,700,000 things I love about living in Israel is things that I don't see. What does that mean? I've been in many shuls in the United States, and this isn't to pick on the United States. I just have been mostly in the United States besides Israel. And you walk in, and you're sitting in such a position that when the people walk in the shul, and I've been told it happens a lot on the women's side, that the women start to walk to their seat and they're getting the once over from the other women sitting there. Oh, last season, or whatever it might be. She wore that dress last month. Whatever it might be. You don't hear that. You don't see that here in most places. Again, I can't speak about it everywhere, but it causes problems. And what do you mean about znut? Well, depending how a person's dressed. Just to be moshech, someone who's looking for people to look at them. It also leads, we've talked about this before, when someone is drawn to these kind of things, it also can get them into a position where they get jealous of, like, well, I have to have what that person has, and I have a desire to have this kind of clothing or this fancier jewelry. I'm not telling you anything you don't already know about, where that there are families who have gone into hock up to their eyeballs just because so-and-so made a wedding that was this much money and I have to make something better than them. I have to make something fancier and have to have more flowers, and I have to spend, again, a true story, I have to spend $75,000 on roses for my child's wedding. True story, I know the guy. $75,000 in roses. Here, that'll be 3 stems. But yes. Natural. And I'll repeat the question for the, yes. Is it natural for people to want to look clean and good? And when my father was a businessman, there's no way he'd leave the house unless his shirt was ironed perfectly. And having ironed it, I knew that. Yes. I was the ironer, and his shirt never went below the frayed cuffs and a bow tie and a pocket handkerchief. When he walked out the door, he probably felt like $1 million. Okay, so Judy's asking, is there anything wrong? Especially if you're going for a job interview. Yes. You need to be clean, you need. There's no, okay, so right. Now I'm going to answer the question. I'm going to answer the question by explaining the question along the way, so it'll be on the tape also. There's absolutely nothing wrong with wanting to look good, to be dressed properly, to look neat, to look put together. Absolutely nothing wrong with that. As a matter of fact, it's appropriate. Not to go out looking like a slob. We are children of Hashem. Halacha specifically says that Talmid Chacham who has a stain on his coat is a Chilul Hashem, right? Because that's how a Talmid Chacham dresses. 100% agree. Not talking about that. We're talking about taking this to an extreme. That's what they like. Look at me. Look how. No, not just because clothes make the man. It's beyond that. It's beyond clothes make the man. It's beyond that. It's
because I'm wearing a Prada, isn't that a name?
It's not the
Yes.
pocket square, it's the Chanel pocket square.
right, and it's the Prada. It has to be the I don't know what the name of the shoe brand the shoe is. One has the red bottom to it. Why do I know that? Because I have daughters. They don't have. What is it called? The Booten, I don't know, whatever it is. But they're very fancy schmancy shoes. Okay, you can tell I don't have them.
Wanting the Lamborghini instead of just transportation?
Maybe. Now again, let's go back a little bit. We talked about this. We talked about ga'ava. We talked about haughtiness and pride. There's nothing wrong with wanting to better yourself. If I see someone who has a fancier house, let's say, a nice car, there's nothing wrong with my saying, oh, I'd like to have something like that. I want to make more money so I can have a better car, to be living a better lifestyle. There's nothing wrong with that. It's when it becomes your passion, and that's your focus, and you're jealous, and that's who you become, and you need to try to do something and you put yourself into hack because of that. You put your family in peril because of that. That becomes a very big problem. So the answer does depend on the community, right? That's why I came back. Right. You can't. Okay. So I'm gonna digress for a minute then, because I think it's important to mention this. I got a phone call from a woman this past week, who she and her husband made a conscious datila umi, what's so-called modern Orthodox United States. Never mind. And I let that passing thought go through my head. And they made a conscious decision they want to live more of a Haredi lifestyle. Okay. Nothing wrong with wanting to change your lifestyle and feel that you want to come closer to Hashem if you're motivated by the right thing. And they moved actually from one community to another, to a Haredi neighborhood. I know the neighborhood. It's Haredi. It's not like off the deep end, but it's a Haredi neighborhood. And he started slowly changing, just a white shirt and black pants, and black velvet kippah, and she's starting with this. And then their daughter, who's 18, was going to go to the park with one of the younger siblings on Shabbos. And he says, you need to put on stockings. Why? Because the neighborhood we're in, it's what we do. So he's getting into an argument about her. So I told his mother, I said, you're going to make sure your daughter grows up not religious. You realize that, right? You know that you're forcing her to go off the derech by forcing something down her throat. She's 18. She doesn't want to be what you want to be, and you can't force that onto her. You can say, this is what we would like you to do. If you want to feel uncomfortable, but you cannot force it. When you live in a certain community, when it comes to dress, you're expected to at least conform to some form of similar dress. I would not ever say, I'm going to live in Mattersdorf, very religious, very Haredi community in Yerushalayim, and walk around in a polo shirt and green pants. It's just to live there, to walk through, no problem, but to live there, because I know that's not the neighborhood. It's not what I signed up for. It's not what people want in their neighborhood. And I understand that. You want to live your life a certain way. Okay. But also, if there's a certain level of dress when it comes to tzniut, you can go on the trend. You can be a little more tzanua. That's perfectly fine. It doesn't mean, everyone's walking around half naked, so I'm going to walk around half naked too. No, it doesn't work that way. And it comes, again, when it comes to halachot of davening, to be davening in general, and also being the chazan. There was a person just told me the story a few weeks back. They were davening in shorts. They went to shul in shorts. Not short, just a guy, shorts. And there was a visitor there who he knew from the United States. And he came over and he said very respectfully to me, he said, the halacha says that you don't go to daven unless you're wearing clothing that you would feel comfortable going before the king. He said, yeah. He said, would you go before the prime minister of Israel like that? He said, yes. And the guy burst out laughing. He says, okay, I just don't get it. Okay, I understand. Now, it's very relaxed. And now, thankfully, they changed the Knesset. You have to not wear Jews anymore. In Knesset, that was a nice move. At least raise the bar a little bit. Okay, but you're right. There are certain mores in certain communities that need to be followed. It's part, if you sign up for that, so to speak, then that's what you're part of a community. I do have a very big problem with the lack of individuality. I have a very big problem with other things, but I have a lot of problems in life. So I'll get over it, I guess. Years of therapy, I hope. Anyways, Adam shetola ba'akevo. Once the Yetzer Hara sees this person walking in a very delicate way, and he's always like fixing his clothes and making sure he's like everyone needs to see him and he looks perfect. And he's playing with his hair and make sure it's exactly right, sitting in front of the mirror, just making sure. Omer, the Yetzer Hara says, Ze li, this one's mine. Nice. Right, like Avshalom, who ends up his hair because his downfall. He ends up hanging by his hair in his death. That's correct. And Yosef HaTzadik is also, they say, he was like a child, was exactly what it says he was doing. There are many things that we do, and I mentioned this in Tanya, and I mentioned this already in MesilatYesharim, that we do that are perfectly fine to do. Again, eating, getting dressed, talking, walking. But they're done the wrong way, you have a problem. If a person is walking, taking a trip, taking a walk, a tiyul, or they're speaking, as long as they're not speaking lashon hara, they're not walking someplace they shouldn't go, there's nothing wrong with that. As far as the Torah is concerned, go ahead. I want to take a walk and take around the security road and walk around the Adumim. No problem. By the way, for those of you who have learned Tanya with me and who have not learned Tanya with me, if you do that walk and you have intention because you want to be healthy and you want to serve Hashem, you've raised that plain old walk to some level of kedusha. However, kama bitul Torah nimshach mimenu. How much bitul Torah, how much waste of Torah time can there be? I'm inserting something here he doesn't say. That if you are doing this, l'shem mitzvah of becoming healthy, or staying healthy to serve Hashem, that is not bitul Torah. That is Torah. That's why Ashkenazim at least say the mitzvah is and the bracha in the morning is la'asok b'divrei Torah. The bracha doesn't say I'm commanded to learn Torah or I'm commanded to teach Torah. It says la'asok b'divrei Torah. I have to deal in Torah. It means I live a Torah life. So when you take a walk, when you speak to someone, someone needs to unburden themselves or whatever, you need to talk to calm down or just to shoot the breeze without lashon hara, hopefully. Nothing wrong with it. But if your intention is because you want to be mentally healthier, physically healthier, and then be a better Eved Hashem, kol hakavod, that is Torah. But we're not talking about that here. We're talking about just I'm wasting time. What's that? Eat, drink, and be merry, for tomorrow when you die. Is Epicureanism. The Greek about the body. Right. Absolutely. Remind you about that in 1 second. When you said that triggered something for me to mention. Okay. However, also, kama mina lashon hara. There are certain times you sit with someone, you can have a very simple conversation. The longer you sit, sometimes it kind of degrades. It gets into lashon hara. Kama mina shkarim, and how many times people just outright lie. Kama mina leitzanut, and just plain old laziness. Omer, and it says in Mishlei berov dvarim lo yachtal pasha, where there is much talking, there's no lack of chet, no lack of sin. Now, you mentioned the Greeks. And the Romans. I want to concentrate on the Greeks for a reason. The Syrian Greeks, Hanukkah, right? We have Hanukkah coming up soon. Well, it's relatively soon. It's only a few months away, right? What are we in Tammuz? Oh, Chodesh Tov to everybody. Tammuz, El, Tishrei, Cheshvan, Kislev. 6 months. 6 months to go. We're almost there. I like Hanukkah. You don't have to build anything. You don't have to make it. It's nice. It's an easy one. Okay, unless you're in the southern hemisphere, you just schwitz all day because it's hot. There are a long list of the oils that can and cannot be used for lighting the Hanukkah lights. We have all kinds of halachot about them. Yet, with the exception of the Chanukiah can't be round or can't be on steps like that. We don't have really any halachot about the Chanukiah. As a matter of fact, you don't need a Chanukiah at all. You could take 3 candles, plop them down into a piece of tin foil, light the lights, and you're good to go. There's no need for even a Chanukiah. Yeah, we have a whole list of issues about the candles and the oil and how you light them, where you light, right to left. There's no means. You'd think as Jews, right? We'd have to have it has to be X amount of tvachim below the size and what's the material. It just cannot be made out of cheres. We know that it can be made out of pottery, plain pottery. Why? And why is olive oil the most important? Okay, so they used olive oil in the Beit HaMikdash, but there's more. How do you get olive oil? You have to squeeze the olive oil out of the olive, right? Press. Where is the olive oil, therefore? Inside. It's pnimi. It's internal. The Chanukiah is external, right? It's something you see. It's an outside thing. So the Syrian Greeks, it was all about the body and the external. It wasn't about the internal. It was what, right? So part of the message of Hanukkah, why there's so many halachot about the internal, about the oil itself, is because that's what it's all about. It's about being a Jew, the internal, the pnimiyut. It's not about the trappings, the outside. That's what the Greeks are all about. So we don't care about the external. We don't care about the Chanukiah. You need it if you need it, fine. Here's what you can do. Here's what you can't do. The main thing is to focus on the oil. Thank you very much for mentioning that. Let's move on with life. Klal Gadol, Klal Hadavar. The general rule is, Kevan shekol inyanei haolam einam ela sakanot atzumot. Life we're filled with dangers. How could we not praise whoever wants to run away from these sakanot, whoever wants to increase their distance from those sakanot? There was a TV show my kids watched growing up, Full House. And there's one episode that sticks in my mind to this day. The reason I saw them all, because I was watching with them all the time when they were little. There's one episode, I think the girl's name was Stephanie. Maybe it was the older one, I don't remember. That she was going to learn to drive. She was going to go with her father, who was going to teach her how to drive. And she comes out and she looks at the car, and her father had taken tires and lined the entire outside of the car with rubber tires, so that if she should bump into anything, it won't have any problem, won't be any damage to her or the car. Okay, we laugh about it. It's actually a pretty good idea for some people here who might need that. But okay, it's funny. But in a sense that's what we're talking about. That it's my father used to say, it's not how many horses there are under the hood, it's how many fools there are coming the other way. In other words, you can be the best driver in the world. You got to watch out for the other person. They can make a mistake. But you have to protect yourself. Who would, in their right mind, not drive without a seatbelt? And I'll tell you why I know the date in a second. In January 1st, 1975, Illinois, it became a law that you had to wear a seatbelt. I only know because that week I got my license. But after that, my wife and I had gone a few years later to Epcot in Florida. And there was one of the displays, one of the rooms, whatever you call it, was from General Motors, I believe. And they had one of these things that show the crash test dummies, and with the seatbelt, without the seatbelt. How anyone could watch that and say, I could still drive without a seatbelt? Nuts. And you know what? I teach sitting outside the shul here sometimes. I don't teach too much anymore at that time of day, but I used to teach a lot when it was like Gan was letting out. And you see people pull up, they put their kids in the back seat, no seatbelts, no anything, take off, because it's only a block away, so to speak. A block, there's no block over here, I know, right? It's dangerous, okay? But these are the basics. So putting the tires around your car, so to speak, in this mashal, is taking it a much farther step that 99.999% of people are not going to do. Yet a person who wants to be exceedingly careful, we may laugh and make in this case with the car, okay, but someone who wants to be extra careful in their pre-shoot would want to take extra measures. Zehu inyan ha-pre-shoot hato. This is the good pre-shoot. Remember, he brought in the beginning of this chapter a contradiction in psukim, or concepts. One is that pre-shoot is good, one is pre-shoot is bad. So now he's saying that, yes, here's the good one. Now he's going to, in a few minutes, he'll talk about the bad one. He says, what does it mean? Use what you need in this world. Don't go overboard. Don't take extra. Don't eat more than you should. Don't sleep more than you should. Don't whatever more than you should, or need, not should, than you need, because everyone has different needs. This is what also that Rabbi Yehuda Nasi was praised by when as I already mentioned, that he didn't. Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, who was exceedingly wealthy, he said, I didn't have any benefit from this world, even from my little pinky. So in spite of the fact he was the Nasi, And his table was overflowing, so to speak. It's not the word he uses, but it was mass. It was heaped up with all kinds of great stuff. When Rivka is told, the whole what does it mean? She had two nations in her stomach. She was told by God when Yaakov and Esav are they're going back and forth. Zerabi ve'Antoninus. Anthony, as an Anthony and Cleopatra. Okay, Anthony was a friend of Rabbi Yehuda Nasi. They were contemporaries. They knew each other. That these referred to Rabbi and Antoninus. They always had whatever they needed as in tremendous amounts. But Rabbi Nasi subsisted on the little he needed. We also, without going into details now, Chizkiyahu, king of Yehuda, also was such a person. All the other statements I've mentioned already. Kulam mekaimim umorim. All of them establish and teach. The person who wants to be parush, person who wants to be a chassid, would need to separate from any worldly pleasure, again, anything more than he actually needs. Now, the fact that he keeps stressing that tells you what the bad pre-shoot is going to be. We're going to see that in a minute. But he asks another question first. You might ask and say, wait a minute, if that's a good thing, therefore, wait a minute. Chachamim were very good at giving us gzerot. They said, okay, do this in the Torah. You can't do this in the Torah. I'm going to add a level of protection. Why didn't they make this across the board? Just like they did everything else. You need to strive for this. And he already said that this is really for yechidim. This is for individuals. Why? He says it's clear and simple. It's a klal in halacha, a general rule in halacha that says the only time the chachamim established a gzera, a decree, is they knew that the majority of people could live by it. There's, they didn't put into place, let's say muksa, for example. You can't say, oh, we're not going to do it because most people are not going to be able to adhere to that. No, it's something you learn, you can do. It's easily done. But this kind of thing, to say this, that everyone has to follow this type of lifestyle, they know. And they knew it wasn't going to happen. I love that line. I underlined it in my book. It says, not everyone can be a chassid. It's enough to be a tzaddik. He's just a tzaddik. Imagine that on a resume. Zev Shenlev, tzaddik at large. But those others who do desire to have the zechut, the merit to come closer to God, and also not only for their own good, but also who can be mezakeh others who rely on them. I'm going to come back to that in a minute. They should do these kinds of things. The others that can't do them. This is way too long a sentence. I need to cut it in the middle. What does it mean? Let's say Mr. X wants to be more pious and wants to become more of a parush, more of the pre-shoot. So that is good for him or her. It's good for that individual. He could strive to do better. He could strive to get closer to Hashem. But sometimes it's even more all-encompassing. And this comes into, he doesn't mention it here because this was written in the time when Chassidut was still in its infancy. This is in the 1700s. It's also time of the Baal Shem Tov was the 1700s, later in the 1700s. The concept of a Rebbe in Chassidut. What is the purpose, so to speak, of a Rebbe in Chassidut? The Lubavitcher Rebbe, the Spinker Rebbe, the Satmar Rebbe. What is part of their job? It's not just that they're the leader of the people. Okay. Okay, absolutely. One of the jobs, and that's in quotes, of the Rebbe is to be an example. It's also to be an additional conduit to Hashem. Never to think they're davening, God forbid, to the Rebbe. They're davening for Parnasa. To use the Rebbe as the conduit because they believe he has a closer connection to Hashem, because he's more into the pre-shoot, hopefully. into the prishut, and therefore, when he's mizakeh himself with this prishut, he's causing merit for himself by getting closer to God. He's also mizakeh. He also helps the others around him who rely on him to raise them also to a higher level, to a higher bar, even though they may not be doing that same prishut. That's what he means by this sentence. We can't all be the same. We don't want to be the same. I don't want to be the same as you, and you sure don't want to be the same as me. Trust me. Right? We all are different. Moshe Rabbeinu's one of his many things that he was great about was he was able to understand all the different, people, their approach, and everything in their lives. Because we all have different levels, each one according to their knowledge and their intellect. At least there should be a handful of people at least who will prepare themselves completely, and by those being prepared, will also, like you said, to act as an example model. Let me give you in my own words, one of the things I think he's saying here also. We all at one time or another get down on ourselves and different things. It could be about food. It could be about how my relationship with Hashem. It could be about how I daven, or I don't daven, whatever it might be. And then you come across somebody whom you know, or you don't know really directly, but you know of, and you hear the person speak, or you read something they wrote, or you go to some kenes, some conference, and you get inspired. I will tell you that almost every single thing I learn on a daily basis is because I was inspired by somebody else, one of which is 929, thanks to you. Yeah, thanks to you. My daily Rambam is inspired by a boy who's just turned bar mitzvah last year. He inspired me at 10 years old. Yerushalmi, inspired here at a kenes they had for Yerushalmi. Bavli, I said, was inspired by my Rebbe in yeshiva many, many years ago. And all these things, because I was inspired by somebody else. I wanted to be better. I wanted to grow. And there's other things. So when a person has such a model to look at, when they have this Rav or this Rabbanit, who cannot listen to the Yemima Mizrahi not be moved sometimes by what she says? If you've never heard her speak, just go on YouTube, pick any video she's ever given. I can't believe she said anything no good. The way she speaks and how you can, and she's so easy to listen to and to follow, whether it's in Hebrew or in English. Her English is pretty darn good. She's spoken enough in English she's very good, actually. So to be inspired by these people doesn't mean she's a parush. Doesn't mean this Rav doesn't necessarily mean that. But the more the person adheres to this type of a lifestyle, but a sincere person, not one like, this kind of an individual, because it's nothing to do anymore about being parush. It's about being, like the person who comes every day to davening 15 minutes late, unless they have yard sale, they come early. Why? Because it's about me, right? So this is what he's talking about when he says that these people are doing these things in order to also be mezakeh the rabbim. Take a look at the last couple lines. You've learned this many times, I'm sure, over the years, why we have the four minim, the etrog, lulav, atasim, and aravot, because each one represents a different type of Jew, and we put them all together. These come and mechaper to atone for the other ones. Actually, I'm going to leave this last line to next time because it's an interesting story. I have to read for the Gemara. Let me mark it here. And I will leave you with this. Let me mark this. What's today is, let's just start here. I put ACA, so I know where to go. This was this thought for today. Again, you don't want to shut down when you get to this section of the book. Because even though some of this, maybe most of it, 95% will sound eventually a little bit out of your league, my league, you can get something from it. You really can. Have a wonderful day. Have a wonderful week. And for those of you who are in the Navi class tonight and who can be there, class will be tonight, pushed off from Sunday to tonight at 7 o'clock.